So I bought this fancy recorder here the other day, and I honestly think my phone does a better job of recording it. I don't have to try and clean up the audio near as much, just plugging a microphone into my phone. So I may just do that from now on, and I know that recorder I've got is going to be handy for recording phone calls and shit like that, and then maybe like if I'm sitting down with somebody, more than anything, just to plug more than one microphone in, it's going to be handy. And but this, the phone records very well. So, and might do that for a while. We'll see how it does. But if it makes it easier for me, that's a hell of a deal. I feel a lot better today now that I kind of know what I'm doing, or at least got a general idea where to start with this video stuff. I was kind of a nervous just a nervous wreck yesterday because I didn't get the show up till way late, and y'all have been so good to me, so I'm trying to make it as good of an experience as possible for y'all. So I was kind of a ball of nerves yesterday, and I feel a lot better today. You know, I got a decent amount of sleep, and I feel a lot better today about life. So let's have some fun. Today's episode is brought to you by Don't Be a Gunsel, more affectionately known as the D-Bags. Mr. Josh Williams has partnered with us on this and has become our main sponsor of the show. And a little bit about Don't Be a Gunsel. This is just right from their description on their page. We are farm, ranch, and rodeo folks who are tired of posers, fakes, and wannabes. So we carved out our own brand with a simple message: don't be a gunsel. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, Don't Be a Gunsel, and don'tbeagunsel.com. They've got some hats and some stickers, and then they always share some of the best memes I've seen. So go check them out. Buy some of their merch. If you do, use the promo code BurninDaylight and get yourself 10% off. That's BURNINDAYLIGHT. Get yourself 10% off. Get yourself some cool shit. Help a brother out. And so thanks to Don't Be a Gunsel. Go check them out. Howdy there. I'm Matt McKinley, and we're burning daylight. Well, I was looking through my news feed today, and by news feed I mean my actual news feed, not the social media news feed. I don't get much news from social media, mostly because of the stuff that gets shared, especially on Facebook. I'm not calling my friends idiots. I mean, I do have a lot of friends that are idiots, but I'm not really referring to them in that way right now. A lot of people just read a headline and then they'll share it because the headline gets a reaction from you. And but a lot of times nowadays, I won't say most, but it's not uncommon at all. You read a headline that says one thing, and if you read the actual article, it says something completely different. And the reason for this is the newspaper companies are not selling hardly any actual newspapers anymore. Everything is digital, it's online. And that is not very conducive for making money on a newspaper, because especially when with the advent of social media, because you can just click share, post it on your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, Instagram, whatever. So to make money, they sell ad space on these links, and so to do that, they come up with a catchy headline that make people click on it, because the ads pay by however many clicks they get, or how many like products are bought, whatever. And so therefore, they need to get you to click
on the actual article, whether you read it or not. They don't really give a shit. The companies don't. The authors, I'm sure, do. The actual journalists that wrote it, I'm sure they care. But their employers don't. As long as you're clicking on that link, they're getting paid, and they can keep the lights on. So that is what is known as clickbait. I'm sure you guys knew that, but I'm going to treat you guys like I treat most of my new employees. You kind of have to treat them like they're retarded. And maybe retarded's not a good word. People get offended nowadays, but you have to treat people like they're incredibly stupid when you first hire them, because I don't know how many times I've had people say, "Yeah, I can do this. I can doctor. I can see sick cattle," and then you ride behind them and pull like 10 head out of one alley behind them, like directly behind them, that they missed. And then you find out they haven't done a goddamn thing as far as cowboying or anything goes. They don't know shit. So that's for all my new employees. I always just kind of treat them like they are just wet behind the ears, dumber than hell. And I mean dumb in a kind. I don't mean it to be disrespectful, or ignorant, I guess would be a better word. I treat them like they're 100% ignorant. They don't know anything about what's going on, so you've got to explain that to people. And so because of that, I've gotten to a habit of that in my outside work life and outside of the work life. And so I don't mean to be condescending to people. It's just how until until people have proven otherwise, I always treat them like they don't know anything. And I don't try to do it with any ill will. I just explaining like you're explaining it to a kid. And I know how that can feel if you do know what you're talking about, because I hate when people are condescending to me. So if you find me doing that to you, slap me in the face or something like that. I get it. So anyway, that's. But there's a lot of people that don't know what clickbait truly means. But that's why your headlines are often really misleading. On top of the already, like the left wing bias in the major media, and or on the Fox News side, the right wing like neoconservative bias. You'll see that in their headlines as well, and just how the articles are written. And I don't know if I've mentioned it on here before, but I think I have. There's no such thing as objective journalism. Everything has a slant to it, and that there's nothing wrong with that. That's just human nature. But it's when the folks claim to be unbiased and are very obviously biased. That's the part that gets a lot of people. If you just come out and say what you are, you get a lot more respect for that. And so anyway, I had to click on the article because the headline read, Jon Stewart rips Rand Paul for virtue signaling. And so I had to click on it because I know how headlines are, and I didn't know. This is one of the first articles that popped up as I was scrolling through my Google News feed, and so I hadn't read anything else this morning, and I clicked on it, and so back to the whole treating you like you're retarded. But so virtue signaling usually is used to describe the social justice warrior, like identity politics, left-wing people. And so they what they do is they make these grand statements that sound really nice, but they're really not saying anything, and they're not really taking a stand against anything. But they're trying to prove to their progressive friends that they are an ally or whatever. But they're woke, if you will. So if I was to be a social justice warrior, my post today would be something along the lines of, slavery is evil and we must fight it to the ends of the earth. And I will always be an advocate for an individual being free or something along those lines. You'd make some I'd have to think about the glowing statement there at the very end. But I believe that any man, woman, or non-binary person who self-identifies as a penguin today ought to be free to live their life with prosperity and happiness. So maybe I'll put that as my Facebook post today. If you guys listen to it, then go to the post and use do the heart instead of do the heart deal. Say that you love it. So that way I know that or no, do the wow, because if there's any people that don't they read it and they agree with me, because I mean everybody should, but I'm not really saying anything. I'm not taking any hard stance. I mean, slavery's been illegal since 1865, and you'd be hard pressed to find more than 10 people for every million people that you survey that truly believe that slavery should be a thing. So I'm not taking any edgy stance, but it makes the way they proclaim it. It makes it sound like it. There's very self-righteous types. So yeah, use the wow emoji so I can differentiate between those who are just laughing. Do the laughing. That's a better one, because that way I can differentiate from the people who listened and those who didn't, and it'll be just kind of a little inside joke between us. And if you got something that's just as flowery and sounds good like that, go ahead and post it, and let's maybe we'll troll some of these Democratic presidential candidates, make these grand statements that really say nothing. So I'm gonna do that when I get done recording this little segment here. But so anyway, Jon Stewart. Back to the original point. See how I did that there? All right. So Rand Paul gets ripped by Jon Stewart for virtue signaling. So I read the article, and what happened was, if you guys remember here a couple weeks ago, when Jon Stewart was in front of, I think it was the Budget Committee or something along those lines, in the House, and he was lobbying on behalf of these first responders from 9/11. So we set up this fund to take care of all the the cops and the firemen and the paramedics, EMTs, and whoever was involved with that just fucking catastrophe there at Ground Zero. I mean, it really was a terrible thing, and with all the environmental effects that come with two skyscrapers crashing down, a lot of these guys that were running in there to save people, and they really put their life on the line, and now they're seeing some consequences of it in the form of cancer and shit. So Jon Stewart, this has been one of his pet projects for a long time. I can remember him. He bashed. He doesn't pull any punches. He hits both sides, and he roasted those guys here a couple weeks ago. And he was right. Whether I happen to just disagree with the whole democracy part of it, where you're still just arguing over how to spend somebody else's money. And as far as government spending programs go, this is a worthy one, because these guys and these men and women, they really did put their life on the line, and they it was a very heroic act that they did, and they should be taken care of. And whether that be on the taxpayer or not, is a debate for another time. But as far as, like I said, as far as stealing money from the taxpayer, this is a worthy cause, I would say. I still don't think it makes it right, but I see the justification behind it. And Rand Paul came out and he said when it comes, so the House passed this bill, 400 and something to 20 something. It was overwhelming bipartisan support, and I'm sure there was probably a couple no votes just in hashtag resistance to Trump, and then there was probably a few from true fiscal conservative type people Justin Amash and Thomas Massey, and people like that who take a principled stand on issues like that. When they say that the debt is out of control and we need to rein it in, they actually mean it. Unlike the rest of the Republicans who will campaign on cutting the debt and lowering the spending and cutting the size of government, but then as soon as they get into office, they just spend. They spend just like the Democrats do. I mean, Trump has in his first year spent more money than Obama ever did in any single year. So yeah, the Republicans are not the party of small government, no matter how much they claim to be. So Rand Paul said he will oppose this bill unless he's going to offer up an amendment to it. So his amendment is going to say that in order to pay for this program, we must cut money from somewhere else. And seems like a pretty common sense type of deal, but common sense ain't very common anymore. And full well going in that he knew this was going to be a very unpopular position because there's one thing about us as Americans, we do support the military. We do we support our police officers whether we should or not, and we support the EMS people, first responder types, the people that are out there actively trying to help people. We we hold them in pretty high esteem, and we support them very well. And so because of this bill has very wide bipartisan support, and Rand Paul, he may be the only senator that votes against it, but that's what taking a principled stance is about. So whether you agree with him or not on this particular issue, he you know where he's going to stand on everything, and that's why I like him so much. That's kind of why I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Bernie Sanders, because as much as I disagree with him on stuff, he has been fairly principled throughout the years. I lost a lot of that respect when he endorsed Hillary Clinton, just because she fucked him 7 ways from Sunday when they were running in that primary. So for him to not have any fight to him on that, and same thing with Cruz when he endorsed Trump. I lost a lot of respect for him, because they both, the way they were treated in that primary, if they would have just said, you know what, fuck you, go pound sand, and didn't endorse anybody, I'd have been fans for life. But they just both showed that they're just kind of slimy politicians. But as far as Bernie goes, he's usually pretty principled, and I can respect the man for that, regardless of what his solutions are. I don't agree with those at all. But so I'm gonna say hats off to Rand Paul. I agree with you in principle on this deal, and I don't know if I would choose this hill to die on if I were you, but well, man, you got some cojones, because you knew the backlash was going to be bad on this one. So stay safe. You might get some death threats, but we need more politicians like that who aren't afraid to take an unpopular stance. They're not afraid to vote no, regardless of what the public outcry is going to be. So yeah, anybody running, you always want to know what are their principles that they stand on, And yeah, are they a coward or not? And I'd say if they've ever seen pictures of Rand Paul next to Trump, it's kind of funny because Trump's a pretty big dude. I think he's like 6'3" or something like that. And Rand Paul is just not a very big fella. So you see him next to Trump, who's kind of, like I said, he's a pretty big, imposing figure. And then there's little old Rand Paul. But I tell you what, that dude has got some serious cojones. So hats off to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing, whether it's popular or not. And I don't know if I'm like I said, I agree with you in principle on the stand that you're taking up, but I guess you're taking that stand now, so this is the hill you got to die on if you're gonna be taken seriously. So I guess good luck. You know, it is amazing how much more work riding a green horse is. You know, and when you're in it and you're plow reining them around and you don't think much of it, just, it's just riding a green horse. That's what it is. And then you give them a day off and you go get on one of your broke horses that you can just go do anything you want. And Bingo is that type of horse. You know, he's not an everyone type horse because he's got a little fire to him, and he's first and foremost a team roping horse. That's what he knows, and I've never team roped off him, but from what Joe tells me, he's a bad cat. So he that's what he knows, and Joe roped a lot off of him. So he's he's wanting to run, but he's wanting to put you right there on the hip, and you just slap a loop on him right there. And he's got some wheels, and he's got a pretty big stop, but he's a little chargy, he's a little high-headed, and he's got a lot of go to him. He's just one of those wound for sound types. But you can go do anything you want to on him. He doesn't spook at a whole lot. He may pitch a little bit in the first thing in the morning, but you need to go to a cow, he'll put you right there. I mean, if you can't get him roped, it ain't Bingo's fault. It's you need to throw a better loop. That's all it is. And I got on him today, and and he's done really well. I thought I caught him favoring a leg, but it was a front leg this time, and he just had a rock in his shoe, so cleaned out his foot, and he was good to go. And he's been a trooper. Didn't try to, he kind of halfway sort of tried to pitch, but really he just kind of took off a lope, and he was lifting his ass end every stride, but it wasn't anything to it. And I am just relaxed and happy, and when you're riding a colt, you're on edge most of the time because they're pretty unpredictable. I mean, you have a decent idea what they're going to do, but when everything is new to them every day, it seems like, you don't really know when they're going to jump out of their skin and land about 10 foot directly to the side of them, of where they were, and leave you sitting right where they were standing. But I mean, you never know what's going to set them off. Horses are funny. Like my buddy Tim he's a tall, skinny guy. We call him Stretch. We also call him Douchebag, and we tell him to shut up all the time. But he's a tall, skinny type of fella, and he's pretty Irish all the way back. And kind of a typical Irish, likes to drink, likes to be loud, likes to have a good time, might like to fight a little bit. And he's not a slouch by any means, but he is like deathly afraid of clowns. Weird kind of deal, but he doesn't like them. So me and Aaron like to send him just the most amazing gifs of clowns that we can find. And then I had a buddy in college named Grady, who was kind of the same thing. He was a big, tall, stout guy. I mean, I think he was like 6'4", 6'5", and stout. Like, he was solid. Probably weighed 240, and it wasn't a fat 240. I mean, he was just solid, kind of bulldogger type. And I played baseball for a while at A&M, I believe. But he was a guy that liked to fight. I mean, he really liked to fight. He was from Moffat County, Colorado, and he kind of ran around with my pal George the Greek Cowboy, and his that crew, and he was like deathly afraid of little people, midgets, dwarfs, whatever the acceptable nomenclature is now. But he, we'd always go to this bar in Fort Collins called the Sundance, and it was about the only like country type bar in town, and so it was way out by the interstate on Mulberry Street, and on Tuesday night was college night, and you paid a $6 cover, and you could get quarter beers, is just Bud Light Draw, or quarter Wells till like 11 or 12. I mean, it was a stupid deal. But we'd always go there on Tuesday night and just have the worst hangover of our lives on Wednesday. But we were there one night, and they always had a live band on Tuesday. Sometimes they'd have most of the time it was just kind of local bands. You know, they were either from like Laramie or Denver. You'd have a few Fort Collins bands, but they always had live music, and then they had a pretty big dance floor. We were standing right at the edge of the dance floor. We had a table there, and of course the way we operated, being the college jackasses that we were, we'd just order a whole tray of double whiskey cokes, and it'd cost us about $6 total. And they used just awful stuff too. They used early times bourbon for their whiskey coke, whiskey 7-Up, whatever. I prefer 7-Up over Coke, but they used early times, which is give or take about $10 a handle. It's pretty cheap stuff. I found out here recently that it's kind of a fixture out here in Nevada, because early times had some sort of deal with the casinos. And so if you ordered just a straight whiskey, if you didn't call it at a casino for a long time, and I think a lot of them still have that deal, like if you just ordered a whiskey Coke, they were bringing you early times of Coke. Unless, like I said, unless you called it, Jack and Coke or, whatever. Unless you called your liquor, they were bringing, if you ordered whiskey, they were bringing early times. But this stuff is just one step above jet fuel, I think. And it's not any more potent than any other bourbon, but it is the case when it comes to bourbon. You get what you pay for, because you don't have blended bourbons. It's all the same batch. It might not be the same barrel. You have your single barrel stuff, but it's all from the same batch. So if they age it longer, it's going to be better, and you get exactly what you pay for when you're getting bourbon. They don't blend it like most other whiskeys. And but because of that, when you get the cheap stuff, it's pretty rank, and early times is no exception. It is, like I said, just about a step and a half above jet fuel, and it was okay for that type of situation, because after you've had about one double whiskey Coke, like they poured them there at the Sundance, using that early time shit, after you drink one of those, your taste buds were pretty well numb, and you could drink just about anything after that. And I shit you not. Some of the best times and the worst hangovers have all come because of early times and coke at the Sundance Saloon in Fort Collins. But anyway, uh, going back to Grady, he was a big tall fella, and we were standing on the edge of the dance floor one Tuesday night, drinking our early times and coke, and there was this little gal that she was not quite classified a little person or a midget. She was like just a hair above that in height, and she was at the Sundance all the time. And we were standing there at the edge of the dance floor, and Grady's kind of in the. I think he had his back almost to the dance floor, and this little gal comes sashaying off the floor. She was right in the middle, swing dancing with somebody. She was a damn good swing dancer. And she came sashaying across there, and you couldn't see her coming from the middle of the dance floor because she's only like 4'8", something like that. And she was a pretty little thing too. She was just really really short, and but she didn't have like the shorter limbs or anything. So like everything was proportional. She was just tiny. But she comes swinging on over, and somebody kind of nudged me, and I forget who it was, but they said, "Look at this," and they said, "Hey Grady, can you hand me whatever it was that they needed at the time?" And he said, "Yeah," but he was gonna have to turn towards the dance floor to grab it, and so he turned. And he catches a glimpse of this gal coming off the dance floor, all, she was just having a good old time. And Grady's eyes kind of rolled up in the back of his head, and his nostrils started flaring, and he started screaming, and I don't know what language, but he was trying to climb over a table and get out there. We were right there next to like the smokers patio, and he was climbing over the top of the table, pushing people out of the way. Kind of looked like George Costanza during the Fire episode when he's just like pushing the old ladies out of the way. Well, there wasn't any old ladies there, but if they had been, he would have been freight training those bitches. he finally got I guess he got out of the flight zone and calmed down a little bit. But that was the weirdest thing. A guy as big and tough as that dude was, but just. Unreasonably scared of a little bitty old gal like that who was just borderline midget. And it was just kind of funny. But horses are a lot the same way. I've said before, they're all a little different. They've all got their own personality. And they just, some of them just react different to anything. There's like my Mustang horse, she's a little watchy on the ground as it is. But even when you're on her back, she's pretty watchy when you get around cattle working facilities. But I think that a lot of that stems to when she was when they gathered them up off the desert. They'd bring them into these feedlots. I've mentioned that before too, and they have working facilities much like you do cattle. They've got these great big tubs, and they're a little different shape just because horses travel a little different than cattle, and it's pretty interesting watching those BLM. I think they're called Wranglers, or something like whatever the BLM hands are called. I think they're called Wranglers, but it was pretty interesting watching them move these horses, and that's one thing I've not been around a whole lot, is just moving large numbers of horses at the same time. We didn't have you didn't have to bring in the Remuda back home, but there's a lot of outfits out west still that they still they bring them in the morning to a big corral, and every cowboy walks out and ropes the one in his string, and away you go. But we didn't have to do that back home. We didn't have those type of outfits. But so it was a real kind of neat, interesting experience for me to watch these horses be worked much like you would processing a pen of cows, and it was neat. It's different, a lot more fast-paced than cattle, unless you're dealing with kind of like Florida swamp rat type shit. They'll move about like a horse does, but for the most part, I mean, those horses are just running, and everything happens at a high rate of speed. It seems like, but that's when they run them through those things. I think a lot of those horses get kind of sour to that, and that's old Red Molly. That's her deal. Her main bugaboo is cattle handling facilities, working facilities. You know, just the gates banging and everything. And she gets a little nervous around it. It doesn't make her flip out completely. It did there for a while, but she's got a lot better. But she's still, I mean, you can feel her tense up when you get around, and she gets a little snorty, and that's just one of her things. Miss Clara, my good mare, best horse I've ever owned. One of her deals was the processing barn. Like, she was fine with the chute. It was the barn itself would I don't know if it was the tin or what that was rattling, but boy, it just same thing. She didn't like it. She'd snort real loud and move about like a cat sideways, and like she never really spooked, but I mean whew, you could tell like her feet were sliding, and she'd get down like she was just stalking something, and she'd watch that barn and just side pass away from it, and then she'd have her head up and snorting for about 8-10 strides, and then she put her head back down and kind of relaxed. But just one of those things. Everybody's got their own little quirks that they don't deal with very well. Like mine is pregnant women. Don't know what it is, but they freak me the fuck out. And I've had 2 kids. I had to live with my wife for 18 months while she was pregnant, and I don't think it was real pleasant for either one of us. I'm glad we made it through, because my kids are awesome, but there was it's something about it that I don't like, and the horses are the same way. It's weird how there's just certain things about to one particular horse that just blows their mind, and you don't know why, and they don't really ever get over it. You know, they might get better, but they don't ever get over it. Most horses don't like their feet being messed with initially, but they get over it. But like that barn deal, Clara got better. I mean, she'll walk past it, but she'll snort and almost army crawl past it every time, and so she obviously hadn't got over it. So I don't know. It's just you always got to know. When you're buying a horse, you always want to know their quirks, if they've been started or if they're broke. You know, you always want to know what their quirks are so they don't leave you on your head someday. And it's different from horses, and there's, just like people, there are some people where nothing bothers them at all, and there's some horses like that, and the ones that are like that, and there's quite a few horses like that, but the ones that are like that and that'll still go to work and do the job like you need it to, those horses are worth a lot of money, because they become kid horses, and once they've kind of run through the prime of their working career, you can transition them into a kid's horse or just a beginner horse, where they're not getting worked near as hard and they're kind of babysitting the rider. Man, that's when you can make some money. You can take a very average ranch horse, skills wise, but if they let a kid do that on them and still go to work, you can make some money on those type of deals. So, but those are pretty rare. I mean, like I've mentioned, you've met all the horses I own or have rode up to this point since I started this deal, and they've all got a little different deal. Miss Lori was really head shy. She's just about over it, but not quite. I mean, it still takes me a little bit to get wormer in her mouth. I gave her some Dermosodan the other day, which is a sedative. And back home, we could get the stuff where you could give it IV pretty easy. It was expensive, but it wasn't hard to get it. And they don't hardly give it out here. You got to have a prescription for it either way. But you can get the paste, which you put under their tongue, and then it takes about 45 minutes to kick in. Whereas if you vein them, it takes about 5 and they're out. But I had to give her some Dermosedan paste the other day, and it was a little bit of a fight. And actually, I think that may have been when I broke my recorder. But she lets me mess with her head. I've laid her down and sat on her and just messed with her head on several different occasions, and that helped a bunch, because when you got a leg tied up and they're laying down, they're pretty well powerless, because you can get a hold of their head and then they can't roll to get back up, and they're just powerless there. So I like to just sit right on her shoulder and just like stick my fingers in her ears and run my hands up in her mouth and pull on her nostrils and whatever, just make her kind of halfway miserable. Don't hurt her, obviously, but just mess with her. And eventually they'll just let out a big old, and they'll relax, and then they're kind of yours after that. But it takes a while on some of them, and she was super head shy for a while, and she still is. Since she's not over it yet, but I think she will get over it. And it just takes some time, a lot of repetition, and you just got to figure out how to communicate to each individual horse, because each one's gonna take criticism or direction a little bit differently, and kind of the general rule of thumb, I guess, between like a mare and a gelding, a stud you just kind of approach with caution, and when you can tell a gelding what to do, and it might not work out for you the first time, but you can, generally speaking, you can tell a gelding what to do, and eventually he'll do it. A mare, you better ask her, or you may end up on the couch or on your head. And then a stud, you just approach with caution, because you're not quite sure what you're going to get. I've been around some studs that are just sweeter than pie, easy to work with, and then I've seen some that are just real assholes. So each horse is different, and that same horse, say you got him as a stud, and as soon as you castrate him, his point of view is going to change, and he'll become a whole different horse. But that's it's one of the fun things about cowboying, is you got to figure out how to communicate with your horse, because they're your biggest tool, or the most frequently used one, and probably your most important. So well, she is working on it.
Got white
Yeah.
maiden voyage here, huh?
Yeah, this is her first colt.
How old is she?
10 or 11, I can't remember, but 10 or 11. This is her first colt. So.
How long does it take for her to actually have them?
I don't know. We've had plenty of colts growing up, but we always just walked out one day and there was a colt laying on the ground. So.
Probably trying to position them.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. No.
Just water. Come on, sis. Push, push, push. Couple more.
Out this time. Get a little bit more dilated out there.
Big push, sis. That head is almost out.
$12.36.
All this is taking place in 34 minutes.
Oh, we're in good shape then.
It's only 12:36?
Yeah, the rule of thumb on cattle is half an hour. If there's no progress, then then maybe assist. But she's obviously made progress in a half hour, so.
Oh, yeah.
And everything's coming right, so he ain't gonna drown. His head's up over that.
I lost a lot of water. She'd been up and down enough times where drain a half a bucket each time she got back up after the water broke.
Yeah, but his nose is up over her hips now, so when that umbilical cord pinches off, he can at least catch a breath out here, so he ain't gonna drown.
Yeah, she stretched out there 2 extra inches on that top.
At least it's not a solid color.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just saying that 2 white socks at least, you know.
I think the stud had a couple white socks. I don't recall for sure, but he was a sorrel.
Give it a big one. Get that leg cranked way up in the air.
Yeah, she's saving up. No need to save up now. Just get it done.
Before it decides to get hot.
Yeah.
Oh, the head's going back in. Don't do that.
There you go.
Oh.
Push, push, push. Come on. There you go, sis. Push. Yeah, there you go. Keep pushing, keep pushing.
Yeah, this time.
Keep going. Another big one.
30 more seconds. Getting back in there a little bit.
Catch a breath and give her hell, sis. Don't get up.
Back in.
That's all back in. Maybe over here in the shade would look better.
Yeah, I might have to shut that gate. Well, folks, she did it. Miss Clara just gave birth to a little stud colt. Calf is the colt's breathing. Clara's a little worn out, so we're gonna let him be for a minute. Let him get reacquainted. Well, folks, that's gonna do it for me today. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty damn excited. Got me a hell of a little baby on the ground, and Mama's doing good. She still needs to clean out yet, but we got time. She will. And I gotta run and get some shavings and some iodine to treat that umbilical cord and get a good place for him to lay down. But he found the tit, and he's doing good. So there we have it. So anyway, from all of us over here at Burning Daylight team, I want to thank you all for listening. And what a coincidence that only 2 days ago I decided to do video podcasts. So now you get to see shit like this. So hope you enjoy it. Go follow me on Facebook, Matt McKinley. Twitter and Instagram at MakerMac85. Follow the show page Burning Daylight on Facebook. And at Burning Daylight on Instagram, at Burning Daylight 2 on Twitter. And go to patreon.com/Burning Daylight. follow if you'd like there, subscribe, contribute, I guess, if you so choose, and go enter our raffle. Win yourself a rope, a pair of jeans, and a ball cap. So thanks to all the folks that kind of teamed up with me there. Branded Denim, 310 Ranch Life, and Don't Be a Gunsel. And on that note, I got a baby to take care of, so move your ass, we're burning daylight.